He woke up at noon, again. Scrolled for an hour, again. Promised himself he'd start tomorrow, again. And something inside him finally broke, not from a crisis, from exhaustion. Exhaustion of living the same day on repeat, of being 17 and already knowing exactly how the next 40 years would look if nothing changed. That day he did something so small his parents didn't notice, so insignificant his friends would have laughed. He made his bed. That's it. 5 minutes. But that tiny act triggered a cascade that would transform everything. Because small habits aren't about the habit itself. They're about proving to yourself that change is possible. Now, I need you to understand why this video matters. This will show you why you don't need massive willpower or dramatic life overhauls to change. You need the right small habits done consistently. Most advice overwhelms you with 10-step programs and 30-day challenges. This shows you that transformation starts with actions so small they seem laughable. You'll learn why lazy people aren't broken, they're just stuck in bad habit loops, and how one tiny habit can create a domino effect that rewrites your entire identity without forcing anything. So, let me tell you about Ryan. He's 17 years old. And if you met him, you'd think, not a bad kid, not a troubled kid, just absent, sleepwalking through life on autopilot. Every day was identical, and I mean identical. Wake up at 11:30 in the morning or later, scroll on his phone for an hour, still in bed, just lying there consuming content he wouldn't remember 5 minutes later, shuffle to the kitchen for cereal, back to his room to game or watch videos until dinner, more scrolling, sleep at 2 a.m., repeat, day after day after day, a loop so predictable you could set your watch to it. His parents tried everything. They lectured him about wasting his potential. You're so smart, Ryan, why aren't you doing anything with your life? They tried punishments, no phone until you do something productive. They tried rewards, we'll buy you whatever you want if you just apply yourself. They sent him to therapy. The therapist was nice, asked good questions, but nothing stuck. Not because Ryan was defiant, he wasn't one of those angry kids pushing back against everything. No, he agreed with everything they said. He knew he was wasting time, knew he should do better, would nod and say, yeah, you're right, I'll change. But knowing didn't change anything. Because Ryan wasn't choosing to be lazy. He was trapped in a habit loop so invisible, he didn't even see the bars of his own cage. Every night he'd go to bed thinking, tomorrow will be different. Tomorrow I'll wake up early, work out, study, be productive, be the person I know I should be. And every morning the alarm would go off at 7 a.m. and his hand would hit snooze without his brain even waking up. It was automatic, like his hand had its own mind. By the third snooze, he'd given up. By noon, he justified it. I stayed up late, so I needed this sleep. I'll start tomorrow. I'll start Monday. Monday became next week. Next week became next month. Next month became never. His friends were moving forward, getting part-time jobs, making plans for college, learning skills, building something. And Ryan was stuck. Not falling dramatically like some after-school special, just slowly fading into irrelevance. Like a photograph left in the sun, the colors getting dimmer and dimmer until there's almost nothing left. And the terrifying part? He could see it happening, could feel himself becoming someone he didn't want to be. But the gap between knowing and doing felt insurmountable, like standing at the bottom of Mount Everest with no equipment thinking, I should climb that. So he did nothing, which is itself a choice that compounds every single day. The shift started with his grandmother. She visited for a week, and every morning Ryan would see her making her bed before breakfast. Not because it mattered, she was leaving the house anyway to run errands or have coffee with friends, but she'd make it, carefully, corners tucked, pillows arranged, and Ryan finally asked her why. Why do you make your bed when you're just going to mess it up again tonight? And she looked at him with these wise eyes and said, how you do anything is how you do everything. If you can't do the small things right, you'll never do the big things right. Ryan thought that was old person nonsense, like something stitched on a pillow. Making your bed doesn't change your life. That's not how transformation works. But that night, lying in bed, thinking about her words, he had a realization that hit him like cold water. He'd been waiting for motivation to do big things, wake up early, transform his life, become a different person. But he'd never proven to himself he could do small things. Maybe that's why big things felt impossible. Not because they were actually impossible, but because he had zero evidence that he could follow through on anything. His track record with himself was 100% failure. Every promise broken, every intention abandoned. Why would his brain believe he could do something hard when he couldn't even do something easy? So the next morning he tried something radical. He didn't try to wake up early, work out, change his diet, read books, learn a skill, and overhaul his entire life like every other failed attempt. He made his bed. 5 minutes. That's it. Pulled up the sheets, straightened the blanket, put the pillows at the top. Done. And something unexpected happened. He felt different. Not transformed, not motivated, not like some movie montage was about to play, but different. Like he'd won a tiny battle against his default self. Like for once, just once, he'd done what he said he'd do. Day 2, he made his bed again, and after making it, he thought, I should probably put my dirty clothes in the hamper instead of on the floor where they've been for 3 days. So he did. 2 minutes. Day 3, he made his bed, put away clothes, and opened the window to let fresh air in. The room had smelled stale for weeks. He'd just gotten used to it. 5 minutes total. Still nothing dramatic, still no life transformation, but the room looked less like a disaster zone. Looked like someone who had their life together might live there. By week 7, something strange happened. Ryan woke up at 11:30 as usual, but before he reached for his phone, before he started scrolling, he thought, I should make my bed first. And he did. And then, here's where it gets interesting, he didn't want to mess it up by lying back down to scroll for an hour. The bed looked nice, clean, put together. So he got up, went downstairs, had breakfast, and by noon he'd been awake and vertical for 30 minutes, instead of scrolling in bed for an hour. That freed up an hour he didn't know he had. Week 2, the ripple effect began. His room looked clear, which made him feel less chaotic. Feeling less chaotic made him want to maintain it. Maintaining it required small daily actions. Those small actions built momentum. It wasn't willpower, it was just easier to maintain order than create it. By week 3, he'd added 10 push-ups after making his bed. Just 10. Started on his knees because he was so out of shape, but he did them. By week 4, he was waking up at 10 a.m. without setting an alarm differently, without even realizing he'd changed his sleep schedule. His body was adjusting because he was going to bed earlier, because he wasn't scrolling until 2 a.m. because he wanted to wake up and do his morning routine. By week 6, he was unrecognizable. Not because of willpower, not because he became a different person overnight, not because he found some magical motivation that had been missing his whole life, because one tiny habit, making his bed, proved to his brain that he could do what he said he'd do. And once you prove that in one area, it spreads. It's like a crack in a dam. At first, it's tiny, barely noticeable, but water finds the weakness, and suddenly the whole structure shifts. His brain started thinking, if I can make my bed every day, maybe I can do 10 push-ups. If I can do 10 push-ups, maybe I can go for a walk. If I can walk, maybe I can apply for that job I've been avoiding. Maybe I'm not the person I thought I was. Maybe I'm someone who follows through. 1 year later, Ryan's life looked nothing like it had. He woke up at 7 a.m. naturally, no alarm needed. Worked out before breakfast. Real workouts now, not just 10 push-ups. Had a part-time job at a local coffee shop. Was saving money, learning responsibility. Was planning to start community college in the fall. Had friends who were also building something instead of just consuming. And when people asked what changed, he'd say, I started making my bed. And they'd laugh, like that was too simple, too stupid, a joke. But Ryan understood what they didn't. Making the bed wasn't about the bed. It was never about the bed. It was about identity. Every morning he made his bed, he cast a vote for the identity of someone who does what they say they'll do. And when you vote for that identity enough times, you become that person. Not through force, not through motivation, through accumulated evidence, through proving to yourself over and over that you're capable of keeping promises to yourself. The habits themselves are small, but what they represent is massive. You're not just making a bed. You're proving you can keep promises to yourself. You're not just doing 10 push-ups. You're becoming someone who shows up. And once that identity shift happens, bigger changes feel natural, not because you're suddenly motivated, but because the new version of you does different things. Ryan tells people now, I talk to him sometimes. He says, I'm not disciplined. I just have better habits. And I didn't build them through willpower. I built them by starting so small I couldn't fail. That's the key right there. He started so small that failure wasn't an option. You can't fail at making your bed. You just do it. 5 minutes. That's all. So what did Ryan actually discover about the power of small habits?
What universal truth can we extract from his transformation? First truth: habits compound for or against you. Every action is a vote for the type of person you're becoming. Skip the workout, vote for out of shape you. Hit snooze, vote for undisciplined you. Scroll instead of create, vote for passive consumer you. But make your bed, vote for someone who follows through. Do 10 push ups, vote for someone who keeps promises. The outcome isn't about one vote, it's about the accumulated ballots. Over time, those votes compound into your identity. Ryan wasn't lazy. He'd just been voting for lazy for so long it became who he was. Changing one vote changed everything. Second truth: start stupidly small. The biggest mistake people make is starting too big. I'm going to work out for an hour every day. I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. I'm going to completely transform my life starting Monday. Day 3, you quit. Why? Because it requires motivation you don't have yet. Because you're trying to become someone you're not through sheer force of will. Ryan's breakthrough was making his bed. A habit so small, it required zero motivation. That's the key. Start with something so tiny that I don't feel like it isn't a valid excuse. Once the tiny habit is automatic, scale up. But most people skip the tiny part and wonder why they fail. Third truth: environment shapes behavior. Ryan's transformation accelerated when his room was clean. Why? Because environment is stronger than willpower. A chaotic room invites chaotic behavior. A made bed invites productivity. If you want to change habits, change your environment. Don't rely on discipline. Design a space that makes good habits easy and bad habits hard. Ryan didn't need more discipline to stop scrolling. He just needed to put his phone in another room while he slept. Environment, not willpower. Fourth truth: identity over outcome. Ryan didn't focus on outcomes like get fit, be successful, make money. He focused on identity. Become someone who keeps promises. When you chase outcomes, you rely on motivation. When you build identity, you become the kind of person for whom those outcomes are natural. Ask not what do I want to achieve. Ask who do I want to become. Then take actions, tiny repeated actions that prove you're that person. So how do you actually implement this? What are the exact steps? First practice: the 2-minute rule. Pick one habit you want to build. Now scale it down to something you can do in 2 minutes or less. Want to read more? Read 1 page. Want to exercise? Do 1 push-up. Want to meditate? Breathe for 2 minutes. The goal isn't the activity, it's proving you can show up. Once showing up is automatic, you'll naturally do more, but start absurdly small. Second practice: habit stacking. Attach your new tiny habit to an existing habit. After I pour my morning coffee, I'll do 5 push-ups. After I brush my teeth, I'll read 1 page. The existing habit becomes the cue for the new one. This removes the need for motivation because it's triggered automatically by something you already do. Your brain says, coffee means push-ups. That's just what happens next. Third practice: the identity statement. Write down the identity you're building. I am someone who keeps promises to myself. Read it every morning. Then take 1 action, no matter how small, that proves it. You're not trying to achieve something. You're becoming someone. The actions are just votes for that identity. Fourth practice: track and stack. Get a calendar, a real physical one that you can see. Mark an X every day you do your tiny habit. Your only goal? Don't break the chain. After 21 days, the habit feels natural. After 90 days, it's automatic. You're not relying on motivation. You're building automaticity through consistency. And once one habit is automatic, add another tiny one using the same process. Ryan went from waking up at noon, scrolling his life away, to becoming someone unrecognizable. Not because of one massive change, but because he understood that small habits compound, that every tiny action is a vote for who you're becoming. And when you accumulate enough votes, you become that person. You don't need to overhaul your life tomorrow. You need to make your bed, literally or metaphorically. Pick one tiny habit so small you can't fail. Do it for 30 days. Let it prove to you that change is possible. And watch the domino effect. Watch how one small habit creates momentum for another and another until you look in the mirror 6 months from now and don't recognize the person staring back. And the best way. Here's your truth. Say it with me. I am not broken. I'm just stuck in habits I never consciously chose. And I can choose different ones, one tiny action at a time. Say it again. Small habits aren't small, they're the compound interest of self improvement. One more time, every action is a vote, and I'm voting for the person I want to become. If this reframed how you see change, if you're seeing that massive transformation doesn't require massive action, hit the like button. Not for me, for you, as a commitment that you're going to start small. Drop a comment and tell me what's your make the bed habit. What's the tiny one you'll start with? Make it real, name it publicly, and subscribe for more stories about transformation through small, consistent action. You're not lazy, you're just unconscious, living on autopilot. Now wake up, start small. One habit, one vote, one day at a time. And let the compound effect change everything.